Welcome, everybody. I'm Julia Chatterley, anchor for CNN, and this is a conversation with Omeed Malik. I think many Americans will know exactly who you are. Internationally, it's a more rarefied crowd, at least for now. So I gathered a few of your titles in order to introduce you across various forms of press, just to be clear. The president-elect's son's boss, you've hired Don Jr., you are a venture capitalist, the firm 1789, an important year. You're an anti-woke warrior, you're an anti-ESG warrior, you're a former banker, a deal maker, a Democratic donor, a Republican donor, a MAGA financier. You were a former member of the Council of Foreign Relations, that's boring by comparison. A child of Iranian and Pakistani immigrants, but obviously born in America. You're also a father and a husband. For those that don't know you and should, who are you, please?
I'm Batman.
And in addition to being Batman.
I think what you ended with is probably the most important to me. Definitely my family is where everything starts, but it's also the reason why I decided to get as involved as I did. I think I had a fairly conventional political upbringing, being from the Northeast in New York City, supporting Democratic candidates. But as I grew older, some of the assumptions I think I had were no longer appropriate based on what was going on in the world. So as the world became more globalized, I think some of the presuppositions that we learned in the 90s about neoliberal or neoconservative thinking were demonstrated to be untrue, particularly with the rise of China, aided by the United States. We needed to rethink the role the United States was going to play, and all of that came really crashing in front of my face with the 2016 election.
In what way?
That as someone living in New York City, I didn't know my own country and how they could have voted for Donald Trump. I was shocked. And when most people in New York City saw that happen, they decided to cry and not get out of bed and complain and try to make fun of him and say he didn't know what he was doing. I decided to do the opposite, which is that a lot of people aren't happy. Why aren't they happy? And you start to look at statistics and you see that we were eviscerating the middle class with our policies. And they had every right to be angry about what was going on. And you saw a similar phenomenon happen with Brexit. So I think you need to start to understand, if you're not taking care of your own people, that should be the number one thing as a leader that you care about. And that sent me on kind of an exploration, reevaluating the kinds of politicians I wanted to support. You do that in the United States mostly through donations and giving money. And then kind of the catalyst and galvanizing moment was the conduct and behavior of our leaders during COVID. And that made me a political refugee, leaving New York and going to Florida, and retrenching there, and deciding to make sure that the people who did that were going to be punished.
Okay, so this is important to set the scene because you are sort of a poster child for the Democratic Party in many respects, and as you've described, you've shifted. For those in the audience that might not know or who are listening to this, you're about as close as it gets to the sort of unofficial White House now, of course, which is Mar-a-Lago, where the president-elect is based. We've mentioned your relationship with Don Jr., his son. You've interacted over
It's my country club, too, Mar-a-Lago.
Okay.
That's where I play tennis.
You hang out there?
Yeah, right.
Okay.
So.
What do we need to understand about what's going on right now in the transition? Because there's a lot of headlines, there's at times a lot of negativity, there's a lot on social media. What's the biggest misconception about what's going on right now at Mar-a-Lago with the transition team and the picks that they're creating for what's going to be the next leadership of the United States?
Well, I think that, one thing I would say that's a takeaway that people should understand is that this is the most ideologically diverse cabinet I've seen in my lifetime. So I think that's really important. There isn't a kind of monolithic approach. It contrasts completely to the situation we had in 2016, when I think even the Trump campaign was probably surprised by their victory. And what has happened historically in Washington is that you then call establishment Democrats or Republicans that are in waiting, and they come in. So the first time they were there, they had to bring in a lot of people because they didn't have the staff or the bench. And also, to be fair, the America First populist ideology was still in its infancy. So you didn't have a lot of people that also believed in it yet. It was just taking hold. And so then you had folks that were in the administration that weren't really with the administration, and that's why you had a lot of the, I guess, acrimony that would occur.
And turnover.
And turnover that would happen because they weren't really aligned with what we wanted to do. It also didn't help, I think, that certain elements of the opposition tried to perform a coup against the president for about 3 or 4 years. So that also didn't help things. But that said, everything's different now. It's 8 years later. You have developed the ideology that I'm talking about, very much so. The facts demonstrate that it's the right way forward for the country. And now we have some of the most talented people from all different walks of lives and pursuits, former Democrats, business people, who are joining to make what I think to be a total all-star team.
I want to talk about some of the individuals, because you know some of the most sort of eye-opening, I think, individuals intimately, which I think is important. But the point about the mandate and about the shift and the change that you want to see and where you've put your money, quite frankly, sort of goes to the point of asking why 74 million people voted for Donald Trump and why the 74 million that didn't were shocked. Certainly mainstream media on the left in the United States were shocked, whether you believed it was going to happen elsewhere in the world. Why did they vote for him?
Oh, that's there's so many reasons, but they probably don't like an open border. So that would be one reason, I think. Believe that you should have a nation state, you should probably have a border. They probably didn't like the Democrats telling them that their sons could become girls. They probably didn't like 9% inflation. They probably didn't like wars all over the world breaking out when you had peace and stability during Donald Trump. So they probably didn't like the way that we exited Afghanistan. So I think they probably didn't like being locked down. They probably didn't like being forced to take an experimental drug. But that's just a few reasons.
Oh, now you've gone down an avenue which goes to the picks. I mean, there was a lot of things in there. We're obviously in this forum. I don't want to dwell on it because I want to get your business perspective too, but do you think there will be less violence over the next 4 years? Is that the ambition for this administration?
The American people, by voting for President Trump, voted for peace, very clearly. That is what we believe Donald Trump represents, is a vote for peace. And we had peace during the 4-year period that he was there. He's one of the only presidents in the modern era that didn't start a war. So that is certainly what I believe, and it's what former Democrats like myself voted for in changing. People like Tulsi Gabbard's entire persona and entire ideology is about being anti-war. She decided to vote for him, become a vocal surrogate, and has now been nominated to be the Director of National Intelligence. Very significant.
At worst, the press coverage of her is that she has ties to the former Assad regime, that she's an American traitor. You've given her money for a long time. You've known her well. You're also the broker in many respects of the relationship between RFK Jr., Bobby, as you referred to him earlier with me, and the president-elect as well. At worst, again, in media coverage, he's an anti-vaxxer, and now he's going to be in charge of the health of the United States and policy that directs that. Give us the understanding of what we need to understand about these people, because you've known them intimately for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, the way that, and I know it's not you, but the way that they're trying to even be described with that nomenclature is exactly why people don't trust the mainstream media anymore. So when Bobby's career was about making clean water, they didn't call him anti-fish. Just because he wants healthy drugs doesn't mean that he's anti-vaccine. Now, let me spend a second about the vaccine topic or drugs generally in the United States to demonstrate how it's actually idiocy to not want to examine what's going on in the current paradigm. In the United States, we're one of only 2 countries in the world that allow pharmaceutical companies to advertise. Most people don't know that. Why is that? Why is it during COVID, when Anderson Cooper was on every night, respectfully, that it was then saying it was brought to you by Pfizer? Pharmaceutical companies are the #1 advertisers on cable news. Do we really think that that doesn't impact their coverage of the topic? So I just think it's obvious that that needs to be examined. But moreover, let's also talk about vaccines for a second. Again, as a businessman. In America, based on a law that was passed in 1986, you must take vaccines, or your children must, but you have no downstream liability associated with it. So think about that for a second. It's a mandated product, but if you are harmed, you cannot sue. There is no other product in the economy that's like that. When I was growing up, I took 8 vaccines as a child. After that law was passed, you now have to tell your children, which I have 2 young daughters, to take 76. He's not anti-vax. He's just a smart person. Any smart person should call that paradigm into question. It has nothing to do with efficacy. It's just incentives and to make sure that they're safe. And at the same time, we have some of the most unhealthy children in the entire developed world. So whatever we are doing, and that has to do with our food supply as well, is not working. Having somebody like him at the head of the HHS is imperative because not only the HHS, but its subcategory groups like the FDA and CDC are hopelessly corrupt and inept.
Okay. There is so much there that I could keep you talking for an hour and a half and debating this, which I don't want to do. But
just Tulsi? Did you want me to do Tulsi?
Well, I think your point is important, that it should be okay to ask questions. And I think the message from perhaps how people are voting and the people that are coming in is that it's okay not to assume when you're one of the richest, fattest, illest nations in the world that the status quo isn't necessarily correct. And I do feel like somehow that debate is getting lost, and that's kind of the message that you're bringing, that we have to be able to ask different questions and do things differently. Are all these people qualified to do the job?
They're certainly more qualified than who's there. I mean, anybody's more qualified than Fauci. I mean, that's, again, an incompetent fool. So I actually think that what he has looked after is nobody asked the question how somebody could be a bureaucrat for 50 years and have tens of millions of dollars when we know that you don't make that much money. That's corruption. So, and the guy's actually never practiced medicine. He's just been a bureaucrat. So, and we look at him like we're supposed to lionize this person. You shouldn't trust any experts that have been in power over the last 25 years. The experts told us that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction. The New York Times told me that they did.
What can you trust? What should you trust as an individual? Because I think this is a point where society's struggling with trust in any form of institution, any form of media. It's going to be exacerbated now by things like AI and misinformation. What do you trust at this moment in time? Because, like we said, 77 million people have just put their trust in President Trump, and you're part of that group.
Well, I think we're just tired of being lied to. We have been lied to. It's demonstrably true, and there are economic reasons for why that's the case. And you need to evolve understanding that technology and economics have shifted the way that news is being portrayed. So it became a business. I mean, again, like, we'll just stay with the United States. Look at the major television stations. They're all owned by corporate conglomerates. So CBS is owned by Paramount, NBC is owned by Comcast, and ABC is owned by Disney. And then you have a few billionaires that own some other properties. That's basically the media in the United States. What has happened really since 2020, when big tech companies colluded with large broadcast networks to suppress factual information about President Biden's son's laptop, which was not Russian disinformation, people realized that they were totally lied to at that point. And what we needed to do was find other avenues to ascertain information from what we believe to be authentic sourcing. And at some point, capitalists like myself were going to fill the void with that. And, I'm happy to say that one of the first investments our new fund made was putting Tucker Carlson in business with his new network.
And just in case you don't know who Tucker Carlson is, to the left, he's sort of a devil incarnate, and to the right, he's sort of a folk hero. Do you believe everything he says?
I don't believe anything that anybody says all the time, but, I think for the most part, what he is doing is getting people information with people that they need to hear from. So, for example, when you are beating the drumbeat for war between the United States and Russia, it's important to understand what their leaders are thinking. No reporter of the United States went and interviewed Putin except him. And by the way, thanks to Elon Musk, another national hero, that interview had a minimum of 250 million impressions on it when he interviewed him. Even if you think that's inflated by 50%, that's 125 million people viewed it. MSNBC gets about 100,000 people watching their garbage.
You can't debate the coverage. I'll push back on that and say a lot of people would say there was a lot of propaganda in that, but he was given a platform. And I guess as a consumer, you have to pick and choose what you see as right and wrong in this. I'm conscious of time. Where is the country going to be in 4 years, in your mind, assuming the picks that he's chosen are confirmed by the Senate? Where is the country going to be in 4 years' time? What's the vision?
We are embarking on an American renaissance right now. We couldn't be more optimistic. What we talked a lot about was some of the issues in the past as to how we got here. But going forward, what we have to do now is galvanize the American society and its economy. The first thing is you have to shut the border down. You're not a country if you have an open border. That's step one. And we have to deport people that came there illegally. That's going to actually increase wages for American workers. Secondly, we need to deregulate immensely, open up energy production in the United States, and start creating a pro-growth mentality. We've had the opposite of that over the last 4 years. Once you start getting 4 or 5% growth, and at the same time, we have to cut the inefficiencies in our government by at least $1 trillion as well.
Do you think they're going to be able to do that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think that, if you look at what they're doing with Vivek and Elon with Doge, this is like a very, very important initiative to shine a light on all the waste, fraud, and abuse, particularly even if you look at things like our own Pentagon that can't pass an audit. I mean, how do we accept this stuff? We shouldn't accept this stuff. We should expect more.
How powerful is Elon Musk in this administration, unofficially? Because you've now got to know him over the past month.
I mean, he's a very inspirational, remarkable person. I think he's the Thomas Edison of our time. And for him to be the richest man in the world and spend every day working on transition matters and giving his input, I think is a national service, frankly. He was also, I think, just an incredible surrogate for the president. I mean, he's an iconoclast in his own right. And I thought, just like with him and with Bobby and Tulsi and Vivek and J.D. Vance, by the way, who we haven't talked about, have broadened the tent so dramatically of the Republican Party.
Could you have done this without his money?
I'm certain that we probably could have, but it didn't hurt.
But you think that he's additive to the message at this moment and the shift and change in the United States?
Well, I also think one of the most important things we had this time was that we had what we call now X as opposed to Twitter. So Twitter was a tool used to suppress information and actually helped throw the election, in my opinion, in the wrong way in 2020. Because as you recall, they said that it was disinformation in conjunction with 51 intelligence officials that wasn't real and that was Russian disinformation. So that's highly problematic when intelligence officials are collaborating with a purportedly private actor to suppress information of the American public. What Elon has done is come and taken that over and now allows truly free speech in accordance with the First Amendment. And people are old enough and wise enough, I think, to make their own determination about what's false and what's not.
Are they?
I think so.
I'm frightened for the next 4 years.
Who should be the arbiters then, in my opinion? I mean, that's where
public.
this then right. So
in the end, it's down to us.
It's got to be the public. It shouldn't be a CNN or MSNBC reporter or even a Fox reporter, quite frankly.
I try. I really do. Roll the Rolodex, because you're known for your contacts. What is the business community saying to you? Because there are people listening here, there are people watching. They want to be, I think, optimistic, and I certainly hear optimism from the business community, but I also hear the cautiousness over tariffs, the potential that we do see a sort of jacking up of tariffs, that it causes economic slowdown or inflation. Like, what's the scoop on that? What's the strategy, and what is the business community saying to you?
Well, the business community is thrilled right now in the United States because people want to hire, they want to get back to business. We had, a government in place that was not pro-business, that was not pro-energy. I mean, one of the great things we have now is we're going to lead the world, I hope, in AI and crypto. What we were doing instead was stifling innovation, which is like the opposite of what American ethos should be, is to actually facilitate innovation, particularly in those two areas, which again require energy. A windmill is not going to give you the kind of energy you need for an AI explosion. So,
can I speak to the ESG warrior, anti-ESG warrior? Can we do it sustainably?
I think you can. What you shouldn't do again as the United States is cut off your nose to spite your face, which is to say that I'm only going to use windmills, but everybody else in the world should, burn coal. That doesn't make any sense, actually. And we can try to develop cleaner technology simultaneously and concurrently. Again,
Are
innovative
we
technologies.
Is the US going to do that?
Of course we're going to do that. But we're also not going to stop producing energy that we know works, that we need in order to fuel growth. And I think that's really the difference. And also the other thing you shouldn't do is tell everybody to go to an electric vehicle if China controls 95% of the lithium market. That doesn't seem like a very smart move either, actually, politically or geopolitically. So these are some of the things that we have to stop. And the business community, I think, is thrilled that we have business people, and again, the president himself, also the vice president, like me, is a venture capitalist, are business people. Kamala Harris and Joe Biden never held a job outside of government in their entire lives. So you want those people running an economy? I don't think so. So I think that's another great thing that we have right now at the top. And yeah, I think it's a lot of optimism.
What's Trump's Achilles heel? Because you gave money to Ron DeSantis, you were in Florida. We've mentioned the relationship with RFK Jr. And then obviously you put your weight behind Trump. What do you see as his potential Achilles heel? Maybe there isn't one, but I think everybody has to be aware of their vulnerabilities at a moment in time. What do you see as his in his sort of fight for the United States as you're portraying it?
Well, I think it goes back to how we started the conversation. When you look at, and even Bezos said this the other day, like Trump in 2016 is different from Trump in 24. I think that Trump has only become more impressive. I mean, we didn't even mention it in this, but I don't know where everybody was when you were watching that first assassination attempt and he just got up. Like that level of courage is, I just think, totally uncanny. The other thing that I saw that's different is in 2016, he was really alone. It was like just about President Trump. What I see now is this ability to bring in so many different viewpoints and broaden the tent again that I'm saying about. Like just have a whole faction of people that have different viewpoints and allowing them to come in. That actually takes someone who isn't just about themselves. And that might be some of the perception about him. But if you're going to have someone else who is running for president, like Bobby Kennedy, who again was running for president as a third-party candidate, you have to be very confident in yourself to bring that person in and say, you know, we might not agree on everything, but we're going to have a unity ticket. And also bringing in someone like JD, very much kind of appointing him as like an heir apparent. He's only 40 years old. So these are some of the positive developments that I've seen, not only with the president, but the people around him over the last 8 years. It's just much more formidable now.
JD Vance, 2028?
For sure. I mean, if this works right, I mean, you're talking about, I think, a golden age for at least the next 12 years.
Can America withstand a trade war?
Well, I think America first needs to... America can be a great leader in the world, but we have to get our own house in order. That's why I keep talking about this American Renaissance, which is to say we're not going to be a good leader if we're fractured at home and our own people aren't taken care of. It starts there. Once that happens, and you want to talk about trade, you also want to make sure that the world isn't on fire. We've got to get a more peaceful resolution to what's going on, not just in the Middle East, but with Russia and Ukraine. And then we can start focusing on the type of commerce that's important. But the notion that tariffs are inherently inflationary is just factually inaccurate. We had tariffs in the first administration that resulted in no inflation whatsoever. And of course, the Biden administration kept all of the Chinese tariffs on that we had. And they added more.
So you're a fan of strategic tariffs?
100%. And you know, you can see the results quite clearly. We talked about tariffs with Canada, and the next day the guy flew down to Mar-a-Lago to come have dinner.
And the president of Mexico called.
That too. So I think it's actually very smart. I'd rather have someone threatening tariffs than escalating something into more of a conflict. So it's a very smart strategy, particularly when we've allowed the Chinese to get away with almost everything over the last 20 years.
What's the message to the international community from Mar-a-Lago, from the president-elect? What's the message to everybody out there? What they need to know about what the next 4 years is going to mean, not just for America, but for their relationships with the United States?
I think one of the great things, again, speaking in my private capacity and having know the people that are getting into the government, is that when you have a businessman at the top of the ticket, people want to do business. That's what this is. This is a very business-oriented, and we're going to clean slate. There's going to be a lot of these preconceived notions. You see what they did already back in 2016 to 2020. They want to work with the world and collaborate. And I don't think that nobody should be afraid of that.
America's open for business.
100%.
You had a cameo in Billions.
Does anybody know what that is?
Who's going to, yeah.
Okay.
Who's going to play you in the future? What will they be like?
Thumber in the front right here. He's going to play me. So, yeah.
Done.
No, but yeah, thank you very much again to everybody here in Qatar. It's a great program, and I really appreciate it. And this is a great country, and another example of a country that, you know, I saw their exhibit about mediation. I don't know if you saw that. That's a really important role, and I think that, you know, just coming from the United States, we want more partnerships like that for sure.
So, thank you. You could have said Batman, by the way. Might play you. He'll consider it.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.